Township Council meeting for October 4th, 2016 to order. If you would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silence for those men and women that serve us. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Susan, would you read the Open Public Meetings Act, please?
According to the Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of this meeting has been given to the Daily Record. Notice has been posted in the Municipal Building, 204 Flanders Drakestown Road, Bud Lake, New Jersey, and notices were sent to those requesting the same.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Amianda?
Here.
Mr. Ferrante? Mrs. Labow? Here. Mr. Mania?
Here.
Mr. Stewart? Mr. Roman?
Here.
Mr. Nacastro?
Here. First item is we have an executive session to discuss the FOP negotiations. Mr. Mania, would you bring us into executive session?
Thank you, Mr. President. According to Section 7 and 8 of the Open Public Meetings Act, I make a motion we move into executive session to discuss FOP-SOP negotiations, noting that the minutes will be available upon conclusion of the issue.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Executive session. We'll return in a few minutes. Okay, open back up the council meeting for October 4, 2016. We have 7 resolutions, with number 7 being added today. If Susan, you would give a brief synopsis on that.
Sure, thank
So
you,
we know
Mr.
what-
President. This resolution involves a litigation matter that you're probably all familiar with, New Jersey Foreign Trade Zone Ventures versus Mount Olive Route 80 LLC. And it involves what's known, I guess, as ITC East, and property that's owned by all the named defendants, including the township. And it involves a restrictive covenant on the property that restricted development to, give you the right phrase, a first-class office and research and development park. And this covenant dates back to 1990, and over the years, the plaintiff in the case was unable to market the property successfully. So they filed this case to try to remove or modify the restrictive covenant. And recently, a settlement has come up, a proposed settlement, which would remove the covenant. And I just want to emphasize, this is a private deed restriction. It doesn't have anything to do with the actual underlying zoning of the property. And I talked to the township planner today, and he wanted me to emphasize that to council. And it would basically eliminate it and replace it with one restriction, which is to prohibit the property being used or developed as a motel, not a hotel, but a motel. So we reviewed the settlement. It appears to be beneficial to the township because it would sort of free up the property, allow some more flexibility with what can happen to it within the confines of the existing zoning. And we've drafted a resolution that we would ask council to consider adopting tonight, so that we could move forward in the settlement, and that would authorize us to do that. So, questions, comments, discussion?
Mayor?
This is something that I'm very familiar with and have been working on for some time. It involves the development matters that all of us are aware of on that side of town. This is a lawsuit actually brought by Rockefeller Group against all of the adjacent property owners, including the Holiday Inn, the Marriott, the township. It was brought to clear, as Susan said, a private restriction related to the development of the properties, which limited it to Class A office space, including the 57 acres that the township has. So this, in essence, will allow us, except for the fact that there's a state deed restriction on the property, to develop it consistent with the zoning which was changed, which would be a mixed-use residential, so on and so forth. Rockefeller Group reached out, and they ultimately, and with a prospective purchaser of the BASF property, reached out and was able to get rid of this restriction that existed among all of the property owners there. The 57 acres is still, as is the BASF building, still restricted by the state of New Jersey, and that's a whole separate issue, which will ultimately get resolved by payment of money by whoever develops the property. But this is beneficial to the township. This is something that we've worked very hard to make happen, and I implore you all to pass it.
Any other questions on that? Mr. Roman?
On the resolution for the Sustainable Jersey grant application, what's the feasibility of that, and possibility of developing that property for the solar panels?
I think the feasibility is pretty good. I mean, I don't know if you noticed in the report, he said about 50 acres of it was potentially developable on the landfill. And basically the cap needs to be repaired. So he is going to work on a request for qualifications for potential developers in the next couple of months. The grant application is actually for him to develop a request for proposals because it gets very technical. But the bottom, and we are actually going to go and meet with DEP, I think in about 2 weeks, to talk to them about, partnering and making sure that permits go smoothly and that we can repair the issues that are on the cap. So, it's a definite possibility, and it's actually a very exciting project.
Mayor?
Yeah, Jack Cozen is an amazing fellow. I knew it from the minute I sat down with him. His ability to explain the issues, to identify the issues, to work through the web that the state DEP has become, he's just a tremendous asset to the township, one of the best things that we have done. I think that the property was always developable as a solar site. As Laura indicated, there's a portion of the cap which needs to be repaired. And the question really was not, can you put solar on the landfill? It was, who's going to take responsibility for the maintenance of the cap, fixing it, and the costs associated with that. So it will not only serve, when this is done, to get solar and to generate revenue for the township, but it will also fix the problems with the cap, which will go a long way to resolving issues like Ringenbach Lane in terms of leachate coming off of the landfill, because what you're having now is water infiltration into the landfill. The water then carries the materials off-site.
And polluting wells, right?
Yeah, on Ringenbach.
Yeah.
So this is a win-win for the township in terms of protecting our residents, generating revenue for the township ultimately.
Leyba?
Was it Ringenbach and Lucas for the contamination?
Yeah, I'm only aware of Ringenbach.
But they're putting the water lines on both, right, Lucas and
And
Ringenbach?
also, Old Bud Lake Road.
Old Bud Lake Road, yeah.
And I think there's a couple of properties on 46 as well.
Mhm. And what's going on with like the one property where there's all the acreage that there's only one house, and since there was only one well, she has to wait or something, or how does that work?
Well, actually, the issue there is that it's a vacant property that's in a
Mhm.
serious state of disrepair.
Right.
So, DEP, it's pretty expensive it's a minimum of $5,000 to make this connection, and they were not aware when they were initially contacted that the property was vacant and not being restored or rehabilitated.
Right.
So because of the cost of it, they're not willing to
Mhm.
make that connection until, they have some kind of evidence that it is gonna be rehabilitated.
Interesting. And one other question, for all the buildings up there at ITC, Walmart and all those, if they ever wanted to put solar panels on their roofs, is that permitted in that area? Like how Toys R Us did?
I'm sure they could.
Yeah, 'cause I was
I'm
trying
sure-
to.
For some reason, they made the decision not to do it.
Yes.
It has to do maybe with the way that the roofs were originally constructed and whether or not it's appropriate to have.
Could be, because I remember when Toys R Us did their roof, but I was going on, what is that, Gold Mine Road the one day, and I didn't realize how much higher that is, and you can just see all the roofs right there. I'm thinking, why don't they put solar panels on these roofs? It would be a huge savings in their operating costs.
For
But,
whatever reason, they looked at it and made the determination not to do it.
Right.
so it's no law or anything that's on their heads, so to speak. Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion on these? Any resolutions? All right, just for the record, I have to read in that we came out of executive session. Mr. Roman made the motion, and
I
Mr.
second
Manning
it.
has seconded it, because the recorder wasn't on. Just so you know. We have one ordinance. Does anyone have any questions about the ordinance? Seeing none, do we have any old business? Seeing none, do we have any new business? Do we have anyone from the public wish to be heard? Seeing none, close to the public. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Closed. Open up the Mount Olive Township Council meeting for October 4, 2016. Susan, read the Open Public Meetings Act, please.
According to the Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of this meeting has been given to the Daily Record. Notice has been posted in the municipal building, 204 Flanders Drakestown Road, Bud Lake, New Jersey, and notices were sent to those requesting the same.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Amianda?
Yes.
Mr. Ferrante? Mrs. Laybow?
Here.
Mr. Mania?
Here.
Mr. Stewart? Mr. Roman?
Here.
Mr. Nacastro?
Here. Thank you. Mr. Amianda, would you approve the minutes from the September 20th, 2016 workshop and public meeting?
Yes, Mr. President. I make a motion for approval of all for minutes of previous meetings on September 20, 2016 work session and public meeting.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Amianda?
Yes.
Mrs. Laybow?
Abstain.
Mr. Mania?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Yes. Discussion item, best practices for 2016 and 17. Sherry?
So before I get to that real quick, I just want to remind everybody, we've had two great pieces of news of late. One is that our debt rating went up. We're one step below AAA right now, so first time in my career, I'm really proud of that.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
Excellent.
thank you.
I'm not AAA though. I don't get it. Just kidding.
Second thing is, we had our bond sale today. Amazed, Matt Jessup was out with me today from McManaman in Scotland, and while they recently had AAA towns go out to sell last week that were at 1.8, we actually got the 1.54, I believe it was. So, again, really excited about that. That was pretty significant difference for only a week time frame.
Yeah.
Okay, so on to the best practices inventory. For those of you who've been around for a while, you know that we've been doing this for a few years. And basically, the state requires that we file this in order to get our final allotment of state aid, and they require that you answer so many questions correctly. And the reason that I'm bringing it up publicly is because they also require that it's discussed with the governing body at a public meeting, and it's part of the minutes, and we have to actually certify that that's what the deal is. So, again, just some background. There are some changes to this year's inventory. Last year, we had to answer 50 questions. This year, we actually only have to answer 30, so I was happy about that. The areas that we have to answer in are general management, finance and audit, procurement, budget preparation and presentation, health insurance, and personnel. We have met the requirement to answer so many questions right. We're actually a few over that. As I've said to you, I think almost every year, I can go through some of the questions that we have no's on if you want to. There is a few that I think we can make some changes to some things that we're doing next year to bump us up. But there's a few things like, they want us to cap vacation time after a certain date. We cap vacation time based on number of days, not after a certain date. So, there's a few things that I don't know that we can really change without having to go through a whole negotiation process. But of the few things that we answered no on, I'm not really greatly concerned about the fact that we're not doing these particular things. So does anybody have any questions? Alex?
On the first page for the National Flood Insurance Program, is there a reason why it's not beneficial for us to be part of that?
That one, we've always had no to. Honestly, that's not my forte in terms of why we don't do it. It's probably a question maybe directed towards Fred, who handles OEM. I just know that we don't. As to why, Alex, I can't really answer that piece of it.
Is it possible that, Laura, if we can find out, and at least get in a memo as to why we don't need to? That is, I think, yeah, that's all I have.
Okay. Anybody else? No, we're good?
I don't think so. Oh,
Actually,
okay.
how does our score this year rank with previous years?
We're around the same number, Alex. We're within one.
Okay.
So even though they've reduced the questions, most of these things are things that I control, so I know that they're gonna be right. You know, the finance audit piece, a lot of the personnel stuff as well has to do with contracts and numbers, so. Again, the few areas where we've had a no, it's things like, you know, capping of time and whatnot that, again, we'd have to go through a whole process as part of negotiations to be able to do that. And it's not like we don't cap time, we do, it's just number of days as opposed to like a specific date.
And an increase in score, does that have any weight or affect our state aid?
No. They just want to make sure that you answer a minimum number of questions correctly. It doesn't change, you know, like, let's say if you have to answer 22 correctly and you answer 26, it's not going to change. You're not going to get more state aid as a result. You're just going to get your final allotment.
Okay.
Yeah.
What if you answer less?
If you answer less, then you won't get it, Colleen. Yeah. So, I mean, my goal is always to make sure we're at the minimum and hopefully a few above that. If I can change things that are within my control, then obviously I'm gonna do that. Like, one of the resolutions that's on for tonight is Jack making sure that he files a report with everybody regarding tax appeals. That was one of the questions that came up on the best practice checklist that I knew I could cure, and so I did.
Thank you and good job as always.
Yes, very good.
Appreciate that.
Excellent.
We have 34 pieces of correspondence. Does anyone have anything on correspondence? If not, I open the hearing to the public on ordinance number 22-2016, an ordinance amending section 3H, 3N1, 3N2, and 6B of bond ordinances number 5-2016 of the Township of Mount Olive in the County of Morris, New Jersey, finally adopted on March 18, 2016, in order to amend the description of the project, decrease certain appropriation and authorization amounts, increase certain appropriation and authorization amounts, and amend the average useful life. Mr. Roman?
I move for adoption and final passage of ordinance number 22-2016.
Second?
I'm sorry. Anyone from the public wish to be heard? Seeing none, close to the public. Anyone, council, have any comments or questions? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Amianda?
Yes.
Mrs. Laybow?
Yes.
Mr. Mania?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Yes. Ordinance number 22-2016 is passed on second reading, and I hereby direct the clerk to forward a copy of the same to the mayor and publish the notice of adoption as required by law. Ordinance number 23-2016 is being carried to the next meeting to 10/18. Next item on the agenda for first reading is ordinance number 24 with a second reading of October 18th, 2016. Ordinance number 24-2016, an ordinance appropriating $175,140,000 of which from a grant from the County of Morris and $35,150 of which is from the Open Space Trust Fund for the former Baptist Church Phase 3B project in and by the Township of Mount Olive in the County of Morris, New Jersey. Ms. Slaybaugh?
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that ordinance number 24-2016 be introduced by title and passed on first reading, and that a meeting be held on October 18th, 2016 at 7 p.m. at the Municipal Building, 204 Flanders Drakestown Road, Bud Lake, New Jersey, for a public hearing, consideration of second reading, and passage of said ordinance, and that the clerk be directed to publish, post, and make available said ordinance in accordance with the requirements of the law.
Second.
Second it?
Anyone from the public wish to be heard? Seeing none, close to the public. Any counsel? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Amianda?
Yes.
Mrs. Laybow?
Yes.
Mr. Mania?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Yes. We have 7 resolutions. Does anyone wish to move any to non-consent? Seeing none, Mr. Mania, would you move resolutions 1 through 7?
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the approval of consent resolutions 1 through 7.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Amianda?
Yes.
Mrs. Laybow?
Yes.
Mr. Mania?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Yes. Mr. Amianda, would you move the bill list, please?
Make a motion for approval of the bill list.
Second?
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Amianda?
Yes.
Mrs. Laybow?
Yes.
Mr. Mania?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Yes. Next up, administrative reports. Mayor, Laura?
Yeah, I'll start. First of all, if any of you want to attend at 8:30 in the morning on Thursday, we're going to have a department head meeting with regard to preparedness for Hurricane Matthew. I'm not particularly worried about it right now, but we need to take precautions in the event that it takes a westerly turn and be ready to go in case we have another catastrophic storm like we did with Sandy. Leaving that aside, Thursday, October 6th at the high school, there'll be a presentation of Hidden in Plain Sight. It's a parent awareness program. Only parents are allowed. MOMAC is one of the sponsors. It's really teaching parents to spot the first signs of drug use. It's mandatory for all parents of high school children to attend. Saturday, October 8th is the performance of the rock opera Tommy, and that's at the Mount Olive Performing Arts Center. And Saturday, October 15th, I will have the honor to attend the bridging ceremony for many of the Girl Scouts in town. I think that's being done at the library this year. It's in the afternoon. That's all I have.
Thank you. Anything more?
I don't have it.
Thank you. Any old business? Ms. Lebo?
Yes, thank you. I just want to ask a question. When we used to have the plantings over there, ITC South section on the island, and then they're not doing that anymore, and we're talking about finding a way to, what were you saying, Laura, go out to bid, or?
Yeah, I believe in the past, Sean Canning had developed an RFP process for the Adopt-A-Spot program, so
Uh-huh.
we're in the process of developing the RFP and sending it out again for next year.
Okay, yeah, 'cause I really miss not seeing the decorative plantings through there. It's just always so nice. It just, you know, they always say, like in real estate, you always want, like, your front door has to be nice and perfect, and, you know, so it gives a good impression. And that's just such a main corridor of shoppers coming in and out of town that it was just really nice having it all.
Yeah, it's a very visible spot, and I would
Very.
imagine people who are gonna submit proposals would probably have that one on the top of their list.
I hope so. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other old business? Any new business? Any legal matters?
Other than what we've already discussed. Yep.
Thank you. Council reports, Mr. Amianda, anything on seniors and Board of Ed?
Board of Education did not meet. The next board meeting is on October 10, 2016.
Thank you.
And
Oh,
the
sorry.
Mount Olive Senior Citizen Association Club met today, October 4, 2016, at 11:30 a.m. It was a business meeting. The next club meeting will be on October 18, 2016, at 11:30. Yeah.
Thank you. Ms. Lebo, anything on economic development or TNR?
No.
Thank you. Mr. Maney, anything on planning board or
No.
legislative? I do have an update on health. The Board of Health will be forwarding to the council resolutions recommending and renewing shared service contracts with NetCon and Mount Arlington. Dover is still pending. That'll be after our October meeting. We're doing some after-hours enforcement with education in the dog park as well. The staff is continuing to work on creating a strategic plan and workforce development plan, which they started earlier this year. And on the 18th, the Health Department will be holding its second special handlers training, October 18th at 6 p.m. in the courtroom for Mount Olive nonprofit entities. This is a result of the department sitting down with nonprofits for some of their expressed concerns about the extra burden they had to do by getting licenses. The training is being offered free of charge during normal business and after normal business hours. And last, the senior transportation program is seeing a monthly increase in ridership compared to each month last year. This is due to improvements to the program and staff changes. Mr. Roman, anything on open space or rec?
The only thing I have for open space is on Saturday, October 15th at 9 a.m. A trail workday is being organized. For more information, you can see the Open Spaces website for location where they're going to meet. And that's all I have.
Thank you very much. Anyone from the public wish to be heard? Seeing none, close to the public. Any council comments? Mr. Amianda?
No, none.
Mrs. Lebo?
None?
Mr. Mania?
Yes, I just want to accolades for Sherry on the
Oh,
bond
yeah.
sale.
Thanks, John. I really
Tremendous
appreciate it.
job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I meant to say that too.
Mr. Roman?
I have nothing.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second,
All in favor?
aye.
Any opposed? Closed. Thank you all.
Let me see.